drawers. Suddenly, in the middle of his sifting, he felt compelled to go to the bathroom. Percocet made him constipated, so these days he was often constipated. The constipation moved in bizarre cycles, and astrology he couldn't decipher. He would go days without being able to shit, and then, all of a sudden, he'd have to shit very badly, which was what was happening to him right now as he opened and closed drawers, looking for prescription medicine inside the farmhouse of a person he did not know. He went to the bathroom because there was no other choice, really. Well, there were other choices, but they eluded him at the moment. It was a high-speed moment. Things progressed well on the toilet, but not as quickly as he'd hoped. In the middle of the process, he heard a shuffle outside the door. He held still, which was not easy in that instant, and he listened closely. It was just house noises, he assured himself. When he was finished on the toilet, he thought, for a second, about whether or not he should flush. If he flushed, someone might hear him, but if he didn't, there would be clear evidence of a break-in. He knew this was a thing that robbers did, break in and shit in the toilet and leave the shit there, some kind of malevolent scent-marking ritual. He poured a glass of water and took 4 Lortabs. Then he flushed and left the house. Once outside, he found the trail on the ridge and began walking home. The sun was setting now, and the bay spread out before him, brown and ebbing, the color of pinto beans. Cows stood sedately in the fields, and every once in a while, a flock of cowbirds burst from the wet earth like black confetti. He could feel the Lortabs brimming inside him, warmth flooding his whole body, and soon, he knew, he would be in love with everything. Chapter 2. Berg had moved to Talinas a few weeks earlier to house-sit for Nell's friend's mom, who was traveling to Bali. Her name was Mimi. She was 65, and it was the first time she'd been out of the country. Mimi was retired, and in her retirement, she had devoted herself to pottery. She had many earth-toned coffee mugs, and her yard was filled with ceramic bunnies, all of them standing stony watch like scouts in a frontier army. Mimi had left him a 6-pack in the fridge and some eggs and several blocks of cheese. She also left him a long list of things to do, including watering the plants, caring for the chickens, and feeding and walking the dog, Fish. He was a leggy black dog who didn't like making eye contact. He was very smart, but very anxious, and whenever Berg reached out to pet him, he would draw back and give him a skeptical sideways glance. The chickens so far had proven easier to deal with. There were 4 of them, and they were all named after state capitals: Sacramento, Atlanta, Baton Rouge, and Lansing. Berg spent most nights at the tavern. He would sit at the bar, stoned on perk 30s, drinking beer and watching baseball games he didn't care about. He often ended up in conversations with the owner of the bar, a man named Ed Koenigsberg, whose family also owned the other bar in town, the Western, which was located on the bay, next door to Vlasic's Boatworks. Ed Koenigsberg hated Nick Vlasic and often told long, convoluted stories, which concluded with Ed or one of Ed's family members suffering some grave miscarriage of justice at the hands of Nick Vlasic or one of Nick Vlasic's family members. Ed also liked to tell stories about his stepbrother, Gary Koenigsberg, who, were it not for a freak staph infection caused by a dirty knee brace, might have made it in the NBA. "He could shoot the lights out," Ed said. "Played on that team with Walt Weir that went to the state semifinals. Could shoot the lights out." Ed was not really interested in listening to what Berg had to say, or what anyone had to say for that matter. He was one of those men who seemed to have chosen his profession so that he would have a convenient and unassailable soapbox from which he could express his opinions. This suited Berg fine. He was not very interested in discussing his life. Also at the bar was Tom, an older rancher with coarse, unfinished features. Tom was slowly settling into dementia, and he was no longer able to add sums well. Every time he settled up his tab, he'd count and recount his money, licking his finger before removing each dollar bill and placing it on the table. "Oh, hang on, let me start again," he'd say, shaking his head.